My dad demanded that I give my new apartment to my sister because, according to him, she was the one who actually deserved it. Unlike me, of course. He said it with such conviction, as if I should feel honored to just hand over the biggest accomplishment of my life. Naturally, I refused. That was when he resorted to his usual tactic, threatening to disinherit me. I almost laughed. He had no idea I had already prepared for this exact moment. Calmly, I handed him the documents that proved his so-called favorite daughter had absolutely no claim over my apartment. I walked out of that conversation with my head held high. You ever have that moment when everything finally falls into place? When all your hard work and sacrifices come full circle? That was exactly how I felt standing in my brand new apartment for the first time. I took a deep breath and soaked in the feeling. After 6 relentless years of grinding, I could finally say it out loud. I owned a home. No mortgage. No debt, just mine. Hi, my name is Julie. I am 29 years old, and this is my story. I still remember the day I got promoted like it happened yesterday. It was 2 years ago, and I had been called into my boss's office. I was freaking out, thinking I was about to get fired, but instead, he smiled and handed me a contract with a significantly higher salary. From that moment on, I made a commitment to myself. No more wasting money. I lived like a monk. No designer clothes, no spontaneous weekend getaways, no fancy dinners at expensive restaurants. Every single penny went straight into my savings. But to be honest, saving alone would not have made this dream possible. A year ago, my grandmother passed away. She was my mom's mom, and when her will was read, I found out she had left me $150,000. It was life-changing. That money, combined with the savings I had built up, finally gave me the chance to start house hunting. When I found this 2-bedroom apartment, I knew it was meant to be. Not too big, not too small, just perfect. The best part, I could pay in full, no mortgage. The realtor literally did a double take when I told her. The look on her face when I signed those papers? Absolutely priceless. The moment I got the keys, I went wild. I must have taken 1,000 photos and posted them on social media. The response was overwhelming. Friends I had not talked to in years were commenting and liking my post. Congratulations, Julie! You are living the dream! When is the housewarming party? For the first time in a long time, I felt like people were genuinely happy for me. But of course, reality came knocking. My phone rang, and when I saw the name on the screen, my stomach dropped. Dad. Just seeing his name brought back a flood of memories I had tried so hard to suppress. Julie, he said in that dry, authoritative tone he always used, I need you to come over for lunch next Saturday. It was like a switch flipped in my brain, bringing back everything I had been running from. My mother died when I was 9. Cancer. It shattered our family in ways I still cannot fully explain. But Dad, he did not stay single for long. Within a year, he remarried. Sharon, his new wife, wasted no time making it clear I was not welcome in her life. A year after their wedding, they had my half-sister, Amy. From that point on, I was pushed further and further into the background. Sharon had a long list of rules, and oddly enough, they only ever applied to me. Julie, keep it down! Julie, no friends over! Julie, turn that music off! Meanwhile, Amy got everything handed to her on a silver platter. She was showered with new clothes, the latest toys, and endless attention. Family trips were planned around her needs, her schedule. I was like a ghost, drifting through the house while they doted on her. It was suffocating. Thank God for my grandma Margaret. She was the only reason I survived those years. Her house became my refuge. She lived just 15 minutes away by bike, and I spent every free moment there. My cousins, Jack, Emma, and little Tommy, were often around too. They were Aunt Sarah's kids, and unlike Amy, they treated me like family. We would spend hours playing board games, watching movies, and running around in Grandma's backyard. It was like stepping into another world, a world where I was not invisible. But things back home kept getting worse. Amy had become a nightmare. She would hide my things, spill drinks on my homework, and spread rumors about me at school, and somehow I was always the one who got blamed. Julie, why are you upsetting your sister? Sharon would demand. Julie, stop antagonizing Amy, Dad would echo, never bothering to hear my side of the story. The day I received my college acceptance letter was the happiest day of my life. Not just because I got a partial scholarship, though that was amazing. It was because I knew I could finally leave. My college was 3 states away, and Grandma Margaret helped me cover the expenses the scholarship did not. Leaving that house felt like coming up for air after being trapped underwater for years. College was a turning point for me. For the first time, I felt free. I made friends who supported me, professors who believed in me, and opportunities I never thought I would have. I built a life for myself, on my own terms. And now, standing in my new apartment, I knew I had truly made it. I threw myself into my studies, calling Grandma at least twice a week to keep a piece of home with me. I tried my best to block out thoughts of my father's side of the family. After all, Dad barely called me. On the rare occasions he did, the conversations were short and painfully superficial. Awkward small talk about the weather or his job. He was too preoccupied with his real daughter, Amy. I knew where I stood. After graduation, I returned to my home state. I had received an offer from Thompson & Mills, a position too good to turn down. I figured I would stay with Dad and Sharon temporarily until I found my own place. That idea was shot down before it could even take flight. When I called to arrange my stay, Sharon's voice came through the phone dripping with fake sympathy. "Oh, we gave your room to Amy," she said in that familiar, insincere tone. "She needs the extra space for her things. You understand, don't you?" I waited for Dad to chime in to say something, anything, to defend me, but of course he didn't. He never did. Thankfully, Grandma welcomed me back like I was returning from a long, victorious journey. I moved in with her and started my new job. A few months later, I had saved enough to rent a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It felt like the first real accomplishment that was entirely my own. Then, a year ago, my world shifted. Grandma passed away in her sleep, the result of a sudden stroke. She left the house to my cousins, which made sense since they had always lived nearby and helped her maintain it. To me, she left $150,000, her life savings, with a note in her will, for my granddaughter who reminds me so much of her mother. I wept for days, not because of the money, but because of how much she had believed in me even when my father didn't. This past year has been eerily quiet. Dad and his perfect little family have made minimal contact. They didn't even bother inviting me for Christmas, not that I was surprised. Instead, I spent the holiday with Aunt Sarah and my cousins. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. It was the best Christmas I'd had in as long as I could remember. Fast forward to last Saturday, I was on my way to Dad's house with a sinking feeling in my gut. Every mile closer to their neighborhood felt like a noose tightening around my neck. By the time I pulled up to the house, it was 11:57 a.m., still early. I figured being early was better than giving Sharon any ammunition to complain about me. Dad opened the door. His face was unreadable, a mask of indifference. "Come in," he said, stepping aside without so much as a greeting. I entered cautiously, feeling like prey walking into a trap. They were all there, waiting for me in the living room. Sharon sat in her favorite armchair, poised like a queen on her throne. Amy sprawled across the couch, glued to her phone. Sharon barely acknowledged me with a curt nod, and Amy didn't even glance up. "Sit down, Julie," Dad said, gesturing to a chair across from them. I sat, feeling as though I were on trial. The silence was suffocating. Dad cleared his throat a few times before finally speaking. "Amy has graduated high school," he announced as though he were revealing groundbreaking news. "She's enrolled in the local college." I nodded, unsure what kind of reaction they were expecting from me. Was I supposed to applaud her achievements? Send a gift? I hadn't even been invited to her graduation. "That's nice," I said cautiously. Dad continued, his gaze focused somewhere above my head. "She needs somewhere to live, somewhere close to campus." I raised an eyebrow, still not understanding where this was going. Sharon nodded enthusiastically beside him like one of those bobbleheads you see on car dashboards. And, well, Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Your apartment would be perfect. It's in an ideal location, close to the college." It hit me like a slap. I blinked, struggling to keep my composure. "I'm not looking for a roommate," I said slowly, the words feeling heavy in my mouth. Dad shook his head and finally met my eyes. "You misunderstand, Julie. We're not asking you to let Amy live with you. We're asking you to give her your apartment." I laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. They were serious. They were actually serious. "Give her my apartment?" I repeated, my voice laced with incredulity. "You want me to give up my home, the one I worked years to afford?" "Yes," Dad said, his tone as if explaining a simple concept to a slow learner. "Amy needs it more than you do." I stared at him, then at Sharon, who wore a smug expression. Amy finally looked up from her phone but said nothing. Sharon chimed in, her voice sweetly condescending. "After all, what have you done to deserve such a nice place? Living all alone in a 2-bedroom apartment while poor Amy has to consider student housing?" I stood abruptly, my chair scraping the floor behind me. My pulse was racing, anger boiling in my veins. They didn't just want my apartment, they wanted to erase everything I had worked for, everything Grandma had left me, and for what? So Amy could have a more convenient life? Not today, not ever. Are you all completely insane? My voice came out louder than I had expected, filled with a strength that surprised even me. I am not giving up my apartment. Not now, not ever. I bought that place with my own money. Dad's face darkened instantly. Your own money? Your grandmother gave you $150,000? That is hardly your own money. Something inside me snapped. Years of keeping my head down, of taking their endless passive-aggressive digs, of always being the one to keep the peace, it all vanished in a single moment. My voice dropped into a dangerous calm. My grandmother? You mean Mom's mom? The one who actually cared about me when you were too busy playing house with your new wife and perfect daughter? That grandmother? The one who had absolutely no relation to Amy whatsoever? Right on cue, Amy finally looked up from her phone, her face scrunching in that familiar way that always preceded her dramatic breakdowns. "You are such a terrible sister," she wailed, her voice high-pitched and trembling. "You have always been mean to me. You have never loved me." Dad's voice hardened as he crossed his arms. Julie, I am very disappointed in you. This is not how we raised you. I let out a bitter laugh. Raised me? You did not raise me. Do not even try that. You checked out the second mom died and Sharon moved in. So do not you dare talk about how you raised me. My words came out in a rush, louder and angrier than I had intended, but I was done. Done with their manipulations, their guilt trips, their double standards. I grabbed my purse and turned on my heel, heading for the door. Behind me, I could hear Amy's exaggerated sobs, Sharon's low murmurs of comfort, and Dad shouting my name, but I did not stop. I could not get out of there fast enough. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. But the next morning, my phone rang. Dad again. Julie, listen to me, he began before I could even say hello. You are the older sister. You need to help Amy. That is what family does. I almost laughed. Family. Now you want to talk about family? Where was that family spirit when Sharon kicked me out of my room? When Amy was making my life hell for years? When you did not even bother inviting me to Christmas? That is different, he insisted, his tone full of condescension. You are being unreasonable. Amy needs... You are delusional if you think I am going to give up my apartment to someone who has spent her entire life trying to destroy mine. I cut him off, my voice steady. Do not call me about this again. I hung up before he could respond, but it was not over. Within minutes, Sharon's text messages started rolling in. You have always been jealous of Amy. You are just like your mother, selfish and ungrateful. After everything we have done for you? I stared at the messages, feeling strangely calm. There was no more confusion, no more guilt, just clarity. Dad kept calling throughout the day, but I stopped answering. What was the point? He would just say the same things on repeat, twisting the knife with every mention of family obligations. A week after the confrontation, I decided to host my housewarming party as planned. My apartment buzzed with laughter and conversation, filled with people who genuinely cared about me, friends from work, old college buddies, and my cousins. It felt like a detox, the warmth of their presence washing away the toxicity of the past weekend. Julie? Emma called from the kitchen. We are running low on ice. I got it, I replied, making my way toward the freezer. Before I could reach it, my cousin Jack intercepted me. His face was unusually serious. He was normally the joker of the family, always quick with a laugh. Hey, he said quietly, pulling me aside into the hallway. You might want to sit down for this. I perched on the edge of my new ottoman, heart pounding slightly as Jack pulled out his phone. He hesitated for a moment before handing it over to me. I was at Lorenzo's last night with some friends, he explained. Look who I saw in the back booth. The first photo made my heart stop. There was Sharon sitting in a dimly lit restaurant booth. But she was not alone. A man I had never seen before had his arm wrapped around her. They were kissing, not a friendly peck. This was the kind of kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. More photos followed, Sharon laughing, Sharon with her hand on the man's chest. The man feeding her dessert, their fingers intertwined. They looked comfortable, intimate, like lovers who had done this 1,000 times before. I could not believe what I was seeing, Jack murmured. I know I should not have taken pictures, but... Send them to me, I interrupted, my voice barely a whisper. After the party ended and my last guest had left, I sat alone in the dark living room, staring at the photos on my phone. Who was this man? What the hell was Sharon up to? I needed to know the truth, and it did not take long to find it. Sharon had never been one for subtlety. I found him right there in her Facebook friends list, Robert Mitchell. One click on his profile and my world shifted in a way I never expected. His bio revealed that he had been working at Riverside Insurance Company for 20 years, the same company Sharon had worked at since before she married my father. As I scrolled through his profile, I saw years of photos, company picnics, office parties, holiday events, and in so many of them, Sharon was there. Sometimes she was just a blurred figure in the background, other times she was half out of frame, but it was unmistakably her. Then, a particular photo caught my attention. It was from 15 years ago. In the image, a woman in a red dress sat next to Robert on a park bench. Her face was turned away from the camera, but I knew that dress. It was Sharon's favorite, still hanging in her closet after all these years. The caption read, Perfect Sunday afternoon. 3 years into her marriage to my father, and she had been spending her perfect Sunday afternoons with another man. I felt a sickening realization creep over me, but it did not stop there. I opened another tab and searched for more recent photos of Robert Mitchell. The moment his face filled my screen, I felt as if the floor had dropped out from under me. It was not just the shock of seeing him, it was the features I could not ignore. His eyes, the curve of his mouth, the shape of his nose. I fumbled to pull up a recent picture of Amy on my phone, holding it next to the screen. It was undeniable. Amy was practically a carbon copy of Robert Mitchell. I could not believe I had never seen it before. Amy never looked like my father. She never had. But now it all made sense. The truth weighed on me like a stone in my chest. For 2 days, I carried it with me in silence. Every time I looked at those photos, a wave of nausea washed over me. 20 years of lies, and my father had no clue. The man who raised me, who believed in family loyalty, was completely oblivious to the betrayal right under his nose. When his number flashed on my phone screen again, I hesitated before answering, but something told me to take the call. "Julie," he said in that stern, commanding voice he always used when he wanted to play the role of the strict but caring father. "We need to have a serious conversation. Come to the house, now." I considered dropping the bombshell then and there, telling him everything about Sharon's affair and Amy's real father. But some instinct told me to hold off. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I replied instead. When I arrived, Dad and Sharon were already seated in the living room. He did not waste any time. "Sit down, Julie," he ordered, and I complied, putting on the mask of the obedient daughter for what I knew would be the last time. "Your behavior has been unacceptable," he began, pacing in front of the fireplace like some disappointed monarch handing down a decree. "This selfishness, this refusal to help your sister, it ends now." I watched Sharon nodding in agreement, her expression smug and self-assured. My stomach churned at her audacity. This woman who had lied to my father for decades now expected me to hand over my apartment to her daughter, the product of her deception. "I have made a decision," Dad said, his voice hard as stone. "Either you sign over your apartment to Amy, or I am cutting you out of my will. Completely. No inheritance, no family support, nothing." Sharon's face lit up like a Christmas tree. She thought they had me trapped. I forced a look of shock and distress onto my face. I need to think about this," I whispered, pretending to be shaken. Sharon's smile widened with satisfaction. "Good girl," Dad said, his tone softening slightly. "Take some time to think about what really matters." Could I use the bathroom first?" I asked, my voice trembling as I played the part. He waved his hand dismissively. "Go ahead." I hurried upstairs but had no intention of going to the bathroom. Instead, I slipped into Amy's room, my old room. The transformation was nauseating. Everything was pink and perfect, just like her entire life. On the vanity, her hairbrush sat untouched, full of long, dark strands of hair that matched Robert Mitchell's. My hands shook as I pulled a small plastic bag from my pocket and carefully collected several strands. Next, I moved to Dad's bedroom. His comb was in its usual spot on the dresser, right next to his wedding photo. The irony was bitter as I collected his hair into another bag. That night, I researched DNA testing facilities. I needed a test that could confirm paternity and hold up in court if necessary. It was expensive, nearly $2,000 for rush processing, but I knew it would be worth it. The following morning, I walked into the facility with my 2 carefully labeled bags. The technician explained the process and had me fill out a series of forms. She assured me I would have the results in a few weeks. When the envelope finally arrived, plain and unassuming, I knew everything was about to change. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope, even though deep down I already knew what it would contain. The clinical language was blunt and unambiguous. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. The probability of paternity is 0%. I stared at the words for a long moment, letting the weight of their finality sink in. I should have felt triumph, vindication even, but all I felt was a strange numbness. As if on cue, my phone rang that evening. Sharon's name lit up the screen and I sighed. Her voice was sharp, skipping pleasantries entirely. "We're tired of waiting," she snapped. "Your father and I need your decision about the apartment within the next few days. Otherwise, you can kiss your inheritance goodbye." I kept my voice steady. "Actually, I have been thinking about everything. I'll come over for dinner this Saturday. We can discuss it then." Saturday came quickly. I drove to their house, the DNA test results tucked safely in my purse. This time, the knot in my stomach was not from fear, but from anticipation. They were all waiting for me in the living room, smug expressions plastered across their faces as if they had already won. Sharon practically radiated triumph, while Amy sprawled lazily on the couch, inspecting her nails with a smirk. Dad stood by the fireplace, trying to look serious but barely containing his satisfaction. "Finally," Amy drawled, crossing her arms. "Took you long enough to make the right decision." Dad stepped forward and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I am glad you have changed your mind, Julie. This is what family is all about, helping each other." I shrugged his hand off and met his gaze. "I have not changed my mind. I am not giving up my apartment, not now, not ever." "You selfish brat." Dad's face turned red in an instant. "That is it. You are out of the will. Everything goes to Amy, my real daughter, the one who actually understands family loyalty." I could not help it. I laughed. The sound echoed in the room and they all froze, staring at me like I had lost my mind. "Your real daughter?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. "That is interesting, Dad. Because I have something you might want to see." I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope, holding it out to him. He snatched it from my hand and tore the papers out, his glare practically burning a hole through me. "Read it," I said quietly. "Read it out loud." He began reading, his voice strong at first. "DNA relationship testing report. Then, as he reached the crucial line, his voice faltered, the color drained from his face, and the paper trembled in his hands. Sharon gasped, as if the air had been knocked out of her. This is a lie! She shrieked, her voice laced with panic. She forged these documents. She is trying to turn you against me, against us. I have more proof, I said calmly, pulling out my phone while Sharon continued to scream. My fingers shook slightly as I opened the photo gallery. Look! The room fell silent as I held up the screen. The image was unmistakable. Sharon, locked in a passionate embrace with Robert Mitchell. The timestamp showed it was from just last week. Sharon collapsed onto the couch, her mask of superiority crumbling before my eyes. David, please, she pleaded. I can explain. Explain! Dad's voice exploded in fury, making us all jump. Explain what? How long? 20 years, Sharon whispered, tears streaking down her face. He is my colleague at Riverside Insurance. Amy is his daughter. The silence that followed was suffocating. I watched as my father's world crumbled before him. 20 years of lies unraveled in a matter of seconds. Without saying another word, I picked up my purse and walked out, leaving them to deal with the wreckage. The following week passed in a blur. I went to work, came home, and tried to process everything that had happened. News of the scandal spread quickly through their social circle. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Sharon and Amy had moved out. Dad had hired the best divorce lawyer in town. He had also stopped funding Amy's college tuition. Why should I pay for another man's child? He had reportedly said. When Dad's number appeared on my phone a week later, I hesitated before answering. Curiosity or maybe some lingering hope made me pick up. His voice sounded rough, worn down. Can we meet coffee at Carson's Cafe? I found him at a corner table, staring into a cold cup of coffee. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a week, unshaven, shoulders slumped, and his wedding ring noticeably absent. I filed for divorce, he said without preamble. Sharon and Amy are gone. I told them to get out of my house. I have cut off Amy's college payments too. I said nothing, simply stirring my latte. Julie? His voice cracked. I have been a terrible father to you. Yes, I said evenly. You have. All these years, I favored Amy over you. I let Sharon treat you like an outsider in your own home. I did not protect you. I failed you in every way possible. You did, I agreed. And you never would have realized it if you had not found out the truth about Amy. If she had been your biological daughter, you would have continued treating me like a second-class citizen. You would have taken my apartment and handed it to her without a second thought. He flinched, but did not argue. Please, he whispered, reaching across the table. I pulled my hands back before he could touch them. Please give me a chance to make it right. Let me try to be the father you deserved all along. That was 3 months ago. We meet sometimes now. Coffee, lunch, careful conversations about neutral topics. He tries to make up for lost time, sharing stories about my mother that he had never told me, asking about my work, my friends, my life. But full forgiveness? I am not there yet. Maybe I never will be. 20 years of rejection and neglect left scars that will not heal overnight, if they ever heal at all. As for Sharon and Amy, I hear bits and pieces through the grapevine. They moved in with Robert Mitchell and seem to be living the life they had secretly planned all along. But honestly, I do not care. They are part of a chapter in my life that is closed now.